This year's about over, and I want to get this car running before this year officially ends. So I got like 3 more days. Yeah, like 2 more days. 3 days. 3 more days. So let me bring you in here and I'll show you what we got going on. So what we got going on, I got my same Frankenstein looking brake lines. I'm gonna see if I can get any fuel out of them now. I did get for Christmas my very own, yes, I got a Vevor, one of those. So I took it to work, took my manifold or the distributor out, took that to work. And as is, without separating it, I wanted to try the ultrasonic first. So hopefully that did something. I really don't want to have to split this if I don't have to. And I think maybe my plunger was incorrectly set possibly, or there was just a lot of gunk in there. But essentially what I did is I put that in for about 30 minutes total time. Every one was like maybe 4 or 5 minutes, up to about 35 degrees Celsius, trying to get that thing to loosen up. And a lot of stuff did kind of come out. So that is in, that is together. That's what this side looks like. I'm going to put some bottles underneath this side. Over on this side, instead of just throwing the fuel into the cylinders, I'm going to get some more bottles and put them, like I did this one here, and put the bottles there just to catch it. I want to see if we're going to get any flow better than what we had before. So it's going to be the same process, same thing that I did before. I'll push the plate down, try to get things set. I need, I don't know, maybe 2 millimeters of movement at initial vacuum. So we're going to get this thing started, the process started, and hopefully the car as well. But I want to see if we're getting fuel out of that distributor first. So that's where we're at. There's the setup. I'm probably going to make a mess. Bent the lines a little bit, not too terribly. On the left side, I should say, that side. We'll see. Put her to the test. Okay. Of course, little fuel leak. Right, so 2 or 3 areas that were not fully secure. We'll try this one again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's reconnect and see what we can get. Well, that's flowing better than what it was before. I like. All right, well, let me get these out and I'll show you what the results were for the without fuel injector test. Okay, arguably the most unscientific test you can do on this car. However, I mean, at full throttle, it was putting out more fluid than it did before by a handsome bit. So I think it's time to put this back together and see what we can get done. So to prevent any more deterioration of my paint that I've done in here, I'm going to let this thing bleed down normally, naturally, overnight. Maybe the next day it'll be down low enough, because I really don't want to spray more fuel when I open up these lines. There's no Schrader valve on this system, so as soon as you break one of these lines, see, this is holding right now. There's still 40 PSI in the system, but it's still holding the pressures evenly, because I can see the fuel on each one of these here near the top. And I don't know if you can see them, but it's not rising, so it's holding the pressure inside the diaphragm perfectly fine. And these right now, nothing's leaking. But as soon as I break one of these lines, it would spray everywhere. So I'm just gonna let this thing die down normally, and then I'll continue to tear this back apart tomorrow, probably, and we'll put the injectors back in this side tomorrow. So that's gonna go on a delay. We're gonna move on to part 2 of this, in which I know I got ahead of the curve, but I got some of the cheapo KYBs that are for sale on eBay in 100 different places. So we're gonna go ahead and put that on the front end and at least get one more thing knocked out. I had a feeling something was a little off, but that isn't gonna work. And these are my new KYBs. That is a little odd, so that doesn't fit. Yeah, not so much. So we have some more work to do. This one, I think, is supposed to be up there like that, maybe. There. How's that? That used to be part of that. This used to be part of that. Step 1. 2 bolts on the bottom. I'll clean them, spray them, and a lock nut on a lock nut on top of a nut on the top of this, and it comes out pretty easy. And as you can see, 17. And another 17. Now I'm fortunate, I got a thin 17, which fits underneath this top one perfectly and allows me to get the socket on top at nearly the perfect angle. So now I need it deep. Ugh, figures. All right, moving on. And since I don't care about this, this is gonna get the vice grip treatment. Locked on. Really nice. And it breaks free real easy. Vice grips are off. Take cap off. And this is now looser. Don't forget to get this rubber grommet out. There we go. Oops. So, normal, not normal, normal, not normal. And you'll see how bad this is. There's like nothing for the first inch. But once it still goes down pretty easy. But believe it or not, there's no leaks. It's an impressive bit of kit. That has done a lot of miles. Now the fun part, I recommend leaving this bad boy strapped to get it in here because it's a tight fit. You got to keep compressing and fighting with it. So leave this in here, and the little plastic cap will pop off here in a minute, but just like that. And it's got max deflection already. So now, all I'm going to do is align the holes in the bottom, put the bottom in, raise it with a jack a little bit, so it's at least lined with this hole, put some pressure on it. Make sure you're not covering the holes with a jack though, eh? And then cinch her down on the bottom and slide it through the holes on the top. Really easy. Don't forget, put the washer down first, cup up, rubber grommet. Then we're just going to do some of this until we get it where we want it. Literally everything you're going to need to do this job. And that's with things going a little wrong. That's in. That's That's in. Oh yeah, those are in. Snug down. Oops. And that's in. All done. So one of those while you're in there's, I'm going to start doing just a compression test. I know some of you are probably thinking I should have done that before I did much of anything else after I got it to crank, but you know, I like procrastinating and risking and wasting a lot of time. So unfortunately, this seems to be working out so far. I mean, yeah, they're kind of low numbers, but at least they're consistent so far. Kind of what I would expect. So I got 1, 2, 3 already done. I'm on 4 right now, and we're going to keep cranking and knock out these 8, and I'll show you what I got when we're done. Woo. Ouch. That's a 150. Or as the Scottish say, that's a 150. No, 150. Maybe a 150. Yeah, something like that. I got to work on my accents. We're going to number 6 now. Sechs. 6. No, Sechs. That's German. Come on, get it. Okay. Looks to be about 140. I'm going to retest 1 at least again, maybe 2. I don't know if my gauge is coming back to life or if I'm just sealing better. So I'm going to do one more verification of that other side over there. But I'm going to do 7 and 8 first. Number 7. And yes, I was really nervous about screwing this into that. I even considered not doing it. All right, throttle wide open, button on the trigger. $135. Probably blocking you, but priorities, right? All right, throttle's full. There. $140. Call it 3. All right, on paper, this is definitely the stronger side. And back over here on one more time. Or one more gan. You can see enough of it, I guess. Well, 120, I'll call it. Okay, I'll call it 120. So, we'll see about bringing this thing back around once we get to running it a little bit more. Maybe a little fresh lifeblood in here. You know, the old 8-cylinder additives, mechanic in a can stuff, see if that does anything to an older engine. It does have 225,000 miles on it, so at least I know it runs. So obviously you've seen it doesn't want to fire and stay running. So I think the fueling may be okay. I did just really booger up my air fuel screw because I thought maybe that was going to be the problem. And it's been messed with long before me. So right now I'm just trying to figure that out again as we go. This, I think, maybe was a tooth off. So I reestablished 0 on the crank. I got this back at number 1, and I got this to make sure both of the valves were closed, so it is a top dead center. So we're going to try this again and see if we can get this thing to fire. So what we have here is a failure to communicate with each other. Yeah. Don't even know where to start right now. I'm a little disappointed in myself. I went the wrong way on the air fuel adjuster, and I know people are going to yell at me for that, for even touching that, but whatever. I'm not scared of it. It did just cause me some grief, though. And by what I mean by that is, apparently I went the wrong way, which is clockwise, trying to close it down and start from zero. I was going to back it out a couple turns, and it came off of whatever thread that is down in here. Now, I know it's spring-loaded, and you got to push down in order to get it to engage. But now there's zero resistance, and it is really firm to push down now. So I think I have to take this whole assembly back off again, because I'm not going to mess with trying to take this nut off and reaching under and figuring out, even if I can get to this part of the intake here, or the distributor, whatever you want to call that section. So I think I'm going to take this thing off the car again, get it on the bench, and figure out how bad I boogered this up, and try to figure out the direction to close it and just reverse engineer what I've got going on here. So that is my next step, because I think this is about spot on. I'm going to take that off and confirm it one more time, just to be sure that the timing is set to neutral. However, yeah, that is my problem right now, is that air fuel mixture, 100%. So, getting pretty good at taking this thing off. I mean, I'm just going to take off all the screws around the outer edge and split the case and try to get to the back side of this right here. So that is the plan. Pretty self-explanatory, honestly. All right, wow, okay. Who wants to see what's inside? So that is what that looks like under here. There's the plate. And I am interested in that screw and probably, well, I don't know. I got to get to that in there. Because that, so this whole plate will probably have to come out. I mean, it's just nicely balanced, that's for sure. Yay, I am so happy for me. All right, well, quit procrastinating and let's see if we can figure this out. So not overly complicated. All right, so 3mm-ish, I think it's a 3 anyway. You know you got to push in a little bit. So if you look right there, all you're doing is extending a 3mm, if that's that size, into the plunger. There's a brass fitting on the top side of this. So that's part one of this, right? So all you're doing is pushing this in to engage. Otherwise, it sits up and out of the way. And what you're engaging, I'm gonna try to get a light on it. So there's a brass fitting right on the top. I don't know if you can see that flat screw, but see if I can point to it. Right at the head of this screwdriver. Where's my camera? Put it over this way a little. All right, now you can see it. That guy right there. That. So, I think in order to get that back into this shaft, I need to take this cert clip out and this cert clip out, push this post through and take this whole thing, this whole assembly out so I can get to the top of this bad boy. Because I don't know if this is the bottom of it or not. It might be. This might actually be the bottom of it. So I'll keep you posted. Okay, so this is the bottom of that brass screw. It is still engaged, so I don't need to take this whole assembly out. I need to find where base setting is and how to get there, and then work my way back from there, I guess. But it does adjust this separate from this. So this assembly here is it's what's being adjusted with this as the base. And of course, those are locked in for, oh, good times, good times. Okay, all right, I'm gonna continue trying to figure this out. I'm gonna do some cleaning first here though. Interesting, somebody's screaming, but I think it's just because they're losing at a basketball game. Yeah, anyway, we're getting back to this again. Sorry if I'm shaking, it's a little chilly here in Virginia. But I got her separated, as you guys can see. What I've done, I guess I should back up. I've been doing a lot of research on this, trying to figure out the best way to do this. And it looks like the best way to do this is to unscrew counterclockwise, I think I've done, until it stops. It actually did come to a stop. And I'll show you how far I had to unscrew it to get it to my, I guess, baseline. I'm gonna go pull it out or turn it out 3 full turns first. And again, I'm talking about the 3mm nut on the intake, well, whatever you want to call this whole thing. So I'm gonna get that adjusted and try to get it set to a baseline and hope for the best. That's about all I can do. Nothing fell apart, but I'm glad I took it apart because this was pretty messy. Here, let me show you what we got. So I split the 2 halves. There was no gasket. It's literally just this surface against a clean surface here. So I took this apart, cleaned it out. She's looking really good now, I gotta say. It's like even multicolored, get the rainbow going on this boy back here. So open this thing up a little bit and I'll show you. I put the distributor back in so I can have my fuel, my pin sticking down in here at the right height. I wanted to see where that was, but as you can see, let me see, there. You see that threaded, fine threaded screw right there? That is all the way out. I hope you can see it, but that is unscrewed all the way out, counterclockwise. It came to a stop. I wish that thing would focus. That. So now I'm gonna turn that in 3 turns. Well, before I turn it in, I wanna show you, that is all the way out, which gives you maximum deflection with this piece, the center piece. That gives you maximum range right now. And it lifts the back of this rocker all the way out, as far out as it goes, this end. So here, counterclockwise on that screw until it stops. That put this all the way out towards me at its maximum height. And you can see it's still, that's the roller that the pin rides on. You can see the pin barely, but the pin is as far down as I think we're gonna get it right now. So I'm gonna go from this point, once I put this back together, I'm gonna give it 3 full clockwise turns, and that'll be my initial startup. My starting point, not startup. And then we'll do some more procedures. I'll show you here in a little bit. So part A, put it back together. Take the fuel distributor back off because you can't screw this in, well, maybe you can, but anyway. Let's get this thing back together. So part 2, you see none of the screws are in yet, all the way around. I decided to put the lower half of the plenum down first so I had better access to get that screw for the lower. Where is it? buried down there. There, you can barely see the screw, that flat tip screw, to get that band tight around the base of the throttle body. So that is done. Now I'm gonna go around and cinch up all of these bolts. I gotta put all the bolts in, honestly, actually. So you can see there's still two halves. So we'll lift up the back of this thing when we put all the screws in all the way around. So again, this is not very scientific, but it should give me the results that it'll give me the method I'm looking for. Well, it'll give me the results I deserve, put it that way. But this is the current configuration. Here, let me bring you in closer. I unscrewed that counterclockwise, my air nut, all the way out until it came to a stop, and it did stop. It didn't just suddenly pop out. And then I've turned it back in 3 turns, and that's gonna be my baseline setting. So the next thing I'm gonna do is connect my fuel pump and send fuel. 1, I'm gonna be checking for leaks everywhere else. And 2, I'm gonna see if I have fuel coming out of any of my injectors. And then at that point, I'm gonna stop if I do, and I'm going to adjust that a little bit until the fuel stops even dripping out of the injectors. And that is my phase 1. So here we go. All right, I'm sitting at 10 right now. And I gotta tell you, not very inspiring. A lot of straight streams, everything. And this one's not working at all yet. So these injectors, I think, are pretty terrible. And my next step is to pull my originals out and go from there. Oh, lovely. So we're at 10 turns in right now. Right there on that guy. All right. Well, I can tell you for sure that number 7 is trashed, or I'm sorry, 5 is trashed. There's nothing came through that injector. 2, well, 2 has got more, this guy back here, than anything else. So that one was the first one to turn on. That one's pretty bad. So 2 and 7 are bad ones. Now the other ones, they all kind of put out the same. Maybe, then again, that one's punched in a little bit. So I think I have about 5 to 6 good injectors out of the ones that came out of the car originally. So there we go again. I took all the new injectors, and now they are sitting on the ends, and we'll see if changing all the injectors makes a bit of difference. So far, these are the bad guys. This one put out 0 fuel. This one was way early on the spray. So the other ones seem to be roughly okay. But we'll get this pumped up and pressured and see if we can continue to test a little more accurately. I got one replaced. I replaced the number 1 with one of the older ones. So we'll see if that makes any difference in that. But here we go. Again, 2 millimeters open. And I already forgot how many turns out I am. One minute, and I am not happy with the results.
So this is several days later, and I decided to voice over a rebuild of this fuel distributor. So what I've done here is I've taken off the collar nut, bent back the tabs obviously to get the nut loose, and just used a pair of channel locks. The plunger came out pretty easily. We did fix that in a prior video to get that moving again. So there is a spring on the inside, and that spring did stay in place for me the entire time. You see me poking around with a little bit. So that's done. Now there's that notch, and you want to orient that notch, or pay attention to the orientation of that notch, and it points over towards the fuel in, and that's the output over top of the main supply line. So it orients itself on that first pin. So always maintain the orientation of the top half to the bottom half. You're going to really want to pay attention to that. So if you have a way to mark it, mark it. But there are ways that are built into this that you can tell how the top is oriented to the bottom half. Because when you separate it, you're going to have to get it back together perfectly. There's the Salvox kit that I bought. It does recommend that you wash that diaphragm with some soap and water lightly. So I did go and I did that as well later on. Please be very careful with this plunger. If you drop that, nick it, mar it, it is over. That is new Fuel Distributor, and they're running for like $400 to $700, $900 even, to either buy it online or get one rebuilt. So don't take off the screws on the top, take off the screws that are on the bottom. The top ones are just for adjustments on the individual lines. And this came out pretty easily. So I left 2 of the screws loose to make sure that this didn't pop apart and everything came flying. So as you see, I'm worried about the orientation still. You see that? That's the supply, or that's the return, I think, that comes from the warm-up regulator. And that orientation is going to be based on where the inlet on the bottom half, the fuel comes in. So again, orientation. So that should be 2 and 3. I have that data plate is in between cylinder supplies 2 and 3.
Front, 1,
Again, orientation. Always pay attention to the orientation, the top to the bottom. Maybe it was 3 and 4. Yeah, it was 3 and 4. Either way, I got it back right. So you got to be very gentle and just work it a little bit by bit to start loosening this. There are a ton of O-rings on the inside, and you're trying to work with them. You're trying to work those things loose. So just take your time. Don't pry with anything metal. As you see, I've got my blue, what you call them, interior trim pieces, and I wiggle with those a little bit. time with it. It will come. Just be patient. And make sure the surface you're working on is prepared. As you see, I've got the numbers across the top. Some people get egg cartons. Some people use cupcake holders. I was feeling a bit more ambitious. Just decided to leave them marked with numbers, not isolating anything on my cardboard. So just gentle persuasion. And I do believe here it comes. Didn't really know how many pieces or springs or anything about it because the fuel distributors are very different across the years. So be very, very careful when you turn this over. The diaphragm ended up holding a lot of the stuff in place. Well, all of the stuff actually. And I thought these were going to be removable, but those aren't. All 8 of those are part of the lower half. And there's the upper chamber O-rings going around that center plunger cylinder. It's really a pretty simple system. So now I was trying to see if I could actually remove these pieces because they look like they can. They look like they can be removed. The strange thing was that I couldn't. I poked at them a little bit, even prodded them, and nothing. They look like they're pressed in pretty tight. So I just ended up leaving them in place and decided to push out the plunger cylinder and separate them. I separate it from the bottom half. So after realizing I can't do anything with that, I decided to take off the O-rings on the top half of it. There's still 8 more O-rings that are inside the lower half. Then I got some pliers, and you can pull out these springs. That's all these really are. Just pinch them together a little bit and they pop right out. So you'll have 8 springs and 8 O-rings, obviously. But I removed them just to prevent marring of anything as I try to press this out the bottom. Really simple. I mean, you can actually do it with your fingers too if you needed to. Just wanted to see how much pliability they had, and they didn't feel terrible, but better safe than sorry. See, little spring. That's all it is. Now the fun part. It's not complicated though. And once again, another use for a duct tape. It's the perfect height for plunger pressing. Yeah, don't forget this little piece. That kind of bit me when I was putting it all back together. Yeah, just a soft piece of old 2x4. I actually had to give it a little bit more than I thought I needed to get that to budge. It really felt pretty solid there. And I'm just pointing out to see the alignments. Yep. You have to have those pointing directly towards those cylinders on reassembly. That's why it's so important to orient that the bottom to that fuel inlet. And if you need, put a mark on it. Scratch it a little bit. It's me making more marks, that's all. I wanted to make sure I had that perfectly aligned. I made a little scratch mark there. So I finally get, after flipping it the right side up anyway, I finally get the center section out and just do a visual inspection of it. I didn't see anything that really stood out. There's a bunch of O-rings, as you can see. There's a few on the outside. There's one on the inside. But my biggest thing is I wanted to get this in the ultrasonic to get that thing cleaned out. There was some gunk around the lips, the top and bottom, and the collar of the section I'm holding now. But I blew through it with some compressed air and some brake cleaner. I did take all the fittings off the end where all the fuel lines connect to it. And then here I'm just poking off the seal. Now it's a new seal. The kit that I did get came with another new seal. It's $4 wasted. You can see the cup that's on the inside there and another seal that's on the inside. So be very careful I was planning on using kind of stayed the same. Just do a visual inspection, make sure nothing's marred, rusted, pitted. Now the fun part. Be very, very careful when you put a take this gasket off if it hasn't already fallen off.
There's one.
So make sure you know the orientation again. Pay special attention. Just put in the spring so you can see it come out. Make sure you know which cylinder was where. You want to put them in the exact same spot again. So make sure you know the orientation of that top section where the number one was. So when you take this stuff off, you put each one of the springs and keepers in the correct place. You want to make sure you put them all back in. I don't know if it really matters, but I wasn't going to take the chance. So just be very careful prying this thing apart. So now the minutia. I think I actually gave up using my tweezers. Again, that is the number one. That was the fuel line going to the number one cylinder. And these are just plastic wafers that sat on top of the springs. There were only 3 components in each cylinder, or recess I should say, than the actual springs. I didn't see any debris inside this part, so this was just a simple fact of the matter of taking it apart and looking and inspecting for the most part. Now there's one more piece that sits inside each one of those bores. The springs, it's like a spring for the seat, or a seat for the spring. I hadn't figured that out yet though. I'm still poking at it, trying to see what pieces will come out, what pieces won't come out. So the orifice in each one of those bores stays put, but around the orifice is that seat for the spring. It is metal, and I did figure it out. I just pulled them all out with some tweezers. I know there's a lot of different variations of this fuel distributor. My 450 SL, for example, had no spring in it. Oh, there, I figured it out. What do you know? I was pretty sure I knew where those two came from. So best guess as to which cylinders they came out of. So here on the top, there was one more screw. Hopefully I show it here in a second. It's a 14 millimeter, and that's the orifice right there. So you take that 14 out the top, and then inside that is a plunger with an O-ring on it. So you want to make sure you don't drop that or lose that. It's a small little piece, and I do believe I show it later on. So here, these are the components that went in to the ultrasonic, and I let it cook for, I think, about, I don't know, 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes at about 35 or 40 C. I did see a bunch of stuff coming out. You see the bubbles coming out of the orifices on the left side. And as you can see, those are all the components that didn't go in. I wanted to do a quick comparo to make sure I had a gasket that was actually going to work, because I know these are kind of generic kits. They fit a couple of different types of fuel distributors. So just making sure that all of the holes in the original were at least lined up and would work in the kit that I had. Looked good. Alright, and here it is magically out of the ultrasonic. I blew some more air through all the orifices first, and then slowly begin reassembly. Everything looked great, squeaky clean. Even all the little buildup around the outer lips of the cylinder bore came out perfect. That was the inlet. The main inlet that goes on the fuel distributor has a filter inside it. I've already cleaned that once, but why not clean it a second time? So it's pretty self-explanatory. I put a little bit of lithium grease on all my O-rings, and everything slid on pretty easily. It's not very difficult to figure out which O-rings fit where. So once again, make sure you're paying attention to the orientation. I did mark mine with the tiny little scratches on the outer edge. Of course, not where the surfaces would meet, but make sure you get that alignment correct, so that way all of the orifices inside the cylinder will align with the passages that are inside that top half. You have to have all of them pointing towards those cylinder bores. Double check, triple check, whatever you got to do, just make it happen. Have I said yet that you need to make sure the orientation is correct? Because it's kind of important. You're going to end up doing this again after you get it all back together. So once I confirmed 4, 5, 6 times that everything was where it originally was when I took it apart. I wanted to kind of lock that bore in place. So I put the outer washer, which you bend back over. It's also a locking washer-ish thing, and it's also the retainer for the plunger. But I wanted to get that back in place, kind of cinch it down a little bit, and make sure that it was locked in without moving it when you were tightening it. Well, without moving the cylinder bore while you were tightening it. So I had to loosen and readjust it a little bit already. But I think I got it in the end, and I'm happy with it. It worked. As you see, when I flip it back over, I already have those little springs back in, all 8 of them all the way around. You want to put them in, but just put them in a little bit. Just get them so they go in far enough to stay, because you want to use as much of the outer portion of the spring to put these O-rings on all the way around. And once all the O-rings are in place, then you can simply push those springs all the way in until they stop. You can't push them too far. So back to the top half. Again, get your orientation. That's the warm-up regulator line, and that is my number 1. So 3 and 4 are where that data plate is supposed to align, but that's my number 1. And you just reassemble. So this is where I screwed up the first time. I got the orientation right. I got the top half and bottom half aligned correctly. Just added a little more lithium grease to those O-rings. But yeah, this gasket, it fits pretty snugly, especially through the O-rings. So yeah, don't do what I did this time, and do what I did the second time, and put some screws through the top half. It'll hold the gasket in place a little bit better. As you can see, I just wasn't getting a warm and fuzzy with this, and of course when you pull it back off, the gasket's going to come with it, and it's just a bit of a mess. So now that I have a couple of screws run through to hold the gasket in place a little bit better, I almost forgot what the orientation was for the piece that I left for the bottom half of it, so I had to second guess myself again here. But at least the top half was ready. Or, I'm sorry, bottom half. That's the bottom half. So what was my orientation again? Oh yeah, I forgot, I think. Damn it. Yeah, okay. Now these all fell apart. Damn it. So there's a lot of this. It's tedious, but just take your time. All right, so I think I remember where number 1 is. Now, I remember where number 1 is. and I make sure my 3 and 4 are lined up over the serial number tag. And no, so close. Okay, here we go. Just wiggle, 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 slight pressure. It'll go. Just be patient with it. You want it to be a tight fit. And then I just add some more screws and slowly spun them down by hand. Not a place that you want to use a power tool. So I had everything hand tightened down, just snug. Then I went and got my little torque wrench, and I think I went down. Do your own research on this, but I think I went down. My first pass was at 5 foot-pounds, and I went around and did everything at 5. Then I went back, snugged everything down again to, I believe, 9, maybe 9.5. I don't know. When you're on these small numbers, it's really easy to do like 9.3, 10.1. So I think I was about 9.5 on my final iteration of all of this. But do your own research. Make sure that you're comfortable with whatever you're going to dial yours to. So once you're comfortable with the torque settings, I went and dug out my plunger. I put a very light coat of lithium grease on this thing first. And then slowly twist it and work it down into the bore. Now remember, this is just what I did to this. If you have something else that you want to do to it, by all means do that. But this is what worked for me. Your results may vary. So here I wanted to make sure I got the fold down portion or fold up portion. First I'm just snugging this back down a little bit tighter, making sure I did not spin the bore. I just wanted to get a good feel on that one. Then, once I had that sorted, I wanted to bend over the retainer that holds the plunger in place. And as you can see, I just wanted to get the, how do I say this? The plunger to be flush with the outer edge of the bore, just after the, I guess where it tapers and goes to full width. And once I had it there, I was content with it. So I bent up the outer edges to lock that pin in place, or lock that nut in place. Made sure all my orientation is still good. Alright, so everything was torqued down. And this is that little plunger that I was talking about. It's got a pointy end and a receiver end, I guess, whatever you want to call it. The pointy end goes down into the top. And then I got a new crush washer and put that on, in there as well. And now all the rest of the little fittings went back on, new crush washers on all of those. and I thought everything was good to go. So I got all my O-rings in place. There's my number 1 cylinder, that's number 2, that's number 3. And in between 3 and 4 is my data plate. So everything is aligned. Everything looked good. Got my O-ring on. I got my plunger in. I got it set to where it was flush. And I thought everything was perfect. Remember when I took this thing apart? That hard plastic O-ring? Yeah. So that guy, that brownish hard plastic O-ring, was still on my bench when I got it back together. So I had the pleasure of taking it all apart again and getting back to this point and reinstalling it.
It's a little cold in here right now, so you got to put up with a little bit of the noise. I put a little silicone grease around the edges. Everything's lined, everything looks good. Floor is clean and clear.
Always the tricky one, with the 2 banjos.
So once again, she's all set. I just have to snug those down and we'll start putting power back to this thing, but I want to wait until I get my beakers. I ordered a couple of beakers off of Amazon for, I don't know, $6 or $8. So that way I'll definitely get a better reading than that I was trying to do with this guy. Yeah, it didn't work out so well. I mean, it told me what I needed to know, but with some good graduated beakers, cylinders, it's going to be much more accurate. So I'm having one of those days, right? All I wanted to do today was wake up, have some coffee, lay in the pajamas for an extra hour, watch a little A-Team. But nope, my daughter texted me and told me that her car was stolen last night. So I spent the morning over on campus where she is, hunting down the car, finding the car, and dealing with police all morning. So it's now 4 o'clock, and I am just getting to what I really wanted to do today. So I'm going to get back to this and try to forget about that for a little while. And today I do have my new beakers. They are here. I am going to go measure specifically the quantity after my rebuild of that bad boy. So that's what I'm going to do. See if I can get this working and getting everything the way it's supposed to, instead of worrying about a stolen Subaru. Here we go. Getting fuel pressure once again. Let's see what happens. I think everything is tight. Plate is closed. We got a leaker. What? 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 Huh? Oh, you're trying. I got one. Another one. Okay, I got a dripper. We got a dripper. I'm letting this thing build up. It's really cold in here. So she's firing nicely. She's dripping. Okay. We got a sprayer, 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 sprayer. Okay, they're all doing stuff. All right. Let me take it back one. All right, we got some drips happening. Looks like everyone is dripping just a little bit. Okay. Take it back another half a turn. I'm turning it back until there's no more drips. All right, I'm gonna do another quarter turn. That should stop the drips. All right, if you were military, you know what battle site 0 is and mechanical 0. So right now I'm trying to get to mechanical 0. I think all the injectors are there. Now we're gonna dial it. Shit, I forgot. Okay, let me think about this for a minute. Okay, so plate is closed. We're still at mechanical 0, I'll call it that. All of these have been emptied. Opening this 2 millimeters and powering it up. And I'm also going to start my timer as soon as I connect it. All right, you're not doing anything. Well, yeah, you're not really doing, are you? You're just dripping. Spraying. Where are we at? I'm going to do 1 minute. Showing some of the results. That's what I did the first time. 1, 5, and 7 gave me 24 mils at a minute, but it was kind of a sloppy test. So this time I was a lot more controlled with my timing. I did 30 seconds, and that's 1, 2, and 3 so far. So I'm going to start and I'll show you the results when I get all 8 done again. And these are the last 2. That is numbers 7 on the left and 8. Those are the heaviest ones I had. And here is test number 2, which I can live with those results. So varies from 7.5 to 9 mil. I am going to pump this up a little bit and get it another quarter of a turn and see if I can at least get 10 mil in 30 seconds. I'm almost there on these. So 10 mil, 30 seconds is what I'm looking for. And we'll close this out right now with 7, let me see, that was 6, 7, and 8 right there. And closing this out, there it is right there. 10s across the board. So 30 seconds gives me 10 mils with 2 millimeter opening. I am stoked. So now we're going to put this fuel distributor system completely back together, put all the injectors in, and call it good. None of my injectors are leaking anymore. So I'm going to call this solved. If I still have problems with this thing running, I got to look somewhere else now. But the fuel distributor seems to be working, and the rebuild looks like it worked. So bloody frustrating. So close. That injector hold down screw, 6 millimeter. What a bastard. It struggled with me last time I was in here. Now this time, all she does is spin, so the threads are shot. I can't snug that thing down. So now we're off to get 6 mil thread kit. Yep, I got the whole kit. It's all they were selling. Didn't need half of the stuff, but I needed those. Freaking $45. Ain't that a bitch? Here we go. Phase one, I marked the end of the drill bit just so I know I don't have to go too far in. This is an intake manifold, so obviously be careful if you're doing this kind of thing. Get you in there and have a look. That's where we're going. That's what I took out so far. It's probably far enough down. It's probably, I went maybe 3/4 of an inch down, which is going to be plenty for this hold down screw. Here's the important part, getting this straight. You want to get it as perpendicular as possible. Okay, this is stupid. No need. You don't need it. Just dumb. Screw the helicoil onto the end of this thing once the threads are clean and drilled out and tapped. And then light pressure down and twist and it'll catch. You just got to wiggle it a little bit. This is in the way. It's complicated. You're supposed to screw the helicoil in through here and have a couple. It's just dumb. It's in the way. Just do this. It'll work fine. And I'll show you. There. Helicoil in just below the surface. I got new threads. We're happy. Big fat no-go. Okay, I'm gonna take a pause on this whole thing. My shocks came in, so I'm gonna do some shocks, and I'll probably put that footage earlier in the video, but Papa needs a timeout right now. I don't think the fuel system is the problem anymore. Oh, God.